As we continue to profile prominent monstrations, today it is my honor to speak to a gentleman who I like to call a Renaissance man. He has been an activist, dancer, playwright, salesman, you name it. He has done pretty much everything in what has been a very, very interesting life. Dr. Eddie Donoghue, how are you today?
Oh, fine, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be interviewed by you on my session.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to start with a little background information. Can you tell me what was your full name at birth?
My full name at birth was Thomas Edwin Martin. And when we got the papers for England, I find that I was registered differently, that I was registered as Thomas Edwin Donoghue. But also I was fortunate enough to have a nickname in Montserrat. It was called Tom Pond. So most people in Montserrat, in the street name, they know me as Tom Pond.
Okay. And when were you born?
I was born on the 22nd of July, 1937. I was actually, my mother carried me for 9 months, but in the theater I used to dramatize it and said that I was such a disgusting child. My mother only carried me for 6 months. She had to get rid of me from her stomach. But that's the theater and not the reality. You know, perhaps the theater is bigger than reality. I don't know, but you know, that's my imagination that I could joke about such things.
Yes. What was your father's name and what did he do for a living?
My father's name was Reggie Martin, but really Reginald Martin, the correct name. And he was a businessman. He had shops. He also employed people to work land for him. And he was a fisherman. He controlled the fishing industry. Not only that, he was in charge of the wharfage. When ships came in, he would hire the people, distributors, etc. So he was all around in that business, certainly in Montserrat at the time.
And tell me a little bit about your mother. What was her name and what did she do for a living?
Her name was Margaret Ann Pond. She worked with the servants. She looked after the household, and sometimes she was in the shop, but not very often the shop near George Street. But she was mostly home, looking after the business and the servants, etc. In those days, we had a lot of servants. You know, you could you didn't have to pay them much, and sometimes you would more or less adopt them into sort of servitude, if you like, that they would get their clothes and food for serving you at that time.
So would you say you had a little bit of a privileged upbringing?
Yes, it was extremely privileged while my father lived, because I went to grammar school. I was privileged in that respect. The servants used to come over with milk at 10 o'clock for the break, etc., warm milk, you know. But after he died, there was a significant change, you know, in our fortunes, that we became first normal, then extremely poor. So it was, you know, I experienced all levels of Montserrat society, you can say.
Yes, in those early years, when you were a young lad growing up, is there one thing that you wanted to be when you grew up?
Yes, I wanted to be a calypso singer, because when I was extremely young, teacher Cyril, who was in charge of the agricultural department at the time, and had a jeep, which was really something prestigious in those days. He used to, at the age of 3, 4, he used to take me on his van to swear, because I could swear so much. But the beauty of it was that I didn't know the words exactly, so he came out in a certain, with a certain accent. And of course I wanted to be called Lord Swearer as a Calypsonian, even at those early years. But I think I changed when I went to grammar school, and I'm proud that I sat at the same desk as saw Howard Fergus, who had a different temperament from me. He was one of those students that came in to town on a weekly basis and went back to home during the weekend. And I was more the town boy, the flamboyant person. But nonetheless, later on in life, we were interested in history, especially the history of slavery, the history of Montserrat, that we came into the same field, academic field, that was interesting, although we started far apart in our philosophy of life, in our ambitions, that we ended up doing the same academic work, more or less.
Yes, that's quite interesting that you said you knew Sir Howard Fergus way back then. As we know, Sir Howard Fergus was a professor, author, and got knighted afterwards. In those early days when you first knew him, did you have a feeling that he was going to be somebody prominent?
No, I didn't think so, because I thought it was boring, because he was always sticking with the books, you see. So that was my view of him at the time, while we would go to the grandstand and look after girls, that he was there, and he was very religious, going to church. So we thought it was boring. Now, of course, today I have a different view. I would say that he was academic, and scholarly at the time, but not then. When I was young, my evaluation of him was very different from what it is today.
Now, I understand that your dad, you have quite a few siblings. Do you know how many total you have?
I've been able to count 32. We have 2 John Martin and 2 Rose Martin. And then I just recently, and this is 2018, I just recently learned that I had a sister called Mama, something like that, who I never met and would, of course, like to meet. But 30-something is a very large family. And like they said in Montserrat, you have to, when you're dating a girl, you have to ask about her biography, who your father was or your father is, in order not to, date your own sibling, your own family.
Yes. So from what I understand, that your dad died when you were very young. How did that impact the family and yourself?
I think impact in 2 ways. That at first, at a young age, I thought I was going to take over some of the business. I didn't understand the complications, and that perhaps he owed so much money, and that he was living on credit, mostly from the merchants, and that it changed. The business changed and went downhill very quickly, and my mother did the best thing she could do was to move to St. Thomas in order to help the family from there. I went to live with my godparents, Donoghue, in Wapping, and they were extremely kind and supportive in all respect to me. And they helped to pay my school fees. The husband also helped, that was Bertram and Cedric's dad. They helped to pay my school because my father had been associated with them, so it was very, very good to survive those years. But I also did what I could by starting a shop, the Busy Big Grocery, in Winwood Road. And there I would wait for the crowd coming from the cinema, which was not very far, and put on my record player, the old gramophone record, to see if I could attract customers from then. So even then I was very much interested in selling, in business.
And this was when you were a teenager?
Yes, I was about 17 at the time, about 17 as far as I remember. But of course, to have a business like that means that you have to give credit to the people around you, or they consider you as very bad, and they might buy somewhere else. And the credit was based upon their receiving funds from off island, that my mother is sending this, or my grandmother is sending this, or my son is sending this, which often didn't arrive when they expected it. So that would put your business in trouble, So nowadays I don't credit. Even my books, I don't credit. You buy it or you don't buy it, because I don't want to be able to have to chase people around the corner and force people to lie, because they can come with some really ingenious reasons why they didn't pay their debts.
Do you think growing up and watching your father running several businesses sort of gave you the influence to start your own little business at a young age?
Uh, yes, but one wasn't conscious of that at the time. Later on in my studies, you can think of that influence, the socialization process, which is has a great impact upon you by your family surrounding and those you consider significant others, because he was a significant other to me, that he paid even the stevedores who worked for him at his shop, so that they would gamble there and they would drink at the shop, so he kept everything there. And those are some of the things I learned from him.
Yes. Now, I've heard several people say that the 1950s in Montserrat were really tough times, and also one of the things that happened during that decade were a lot of people started migrating to England, and you were one of them. How did you get that opportunity to migrate to England after your father passed?
Well, I had a scholarship from an uncle or distant relative in the States. His name was George Coltus. He later moved to Nevis. And of course he gave me a scholarship, but he didn't send the money directly to me. He sent it to someone who was at Cable and Wireless, that she would get the ticket. So she got the ticket, and then John Martin, my brother, who was living in Harrogate at the time, was to receive me at the Staines train station. But we caught the boat and we went, I think, to Barcelona, Genoa, and then eventually to England. Of course, that was a great experience coming from a Montserrat, And I had decided that already I would save so much and send for my girlfriend, who was living near Wapping, and near Wapping, near the tennis court in Wapping. I even forgot the name after 50, 60 years, but that was the dream, at the time.
Were you excited to migrate to England, or did you have, torn feelings? Did you?
Oh, I was very excited, because the future for me was dim in Montserrat at the time. The business had failed, everything had failed, and the scarcity of work, etc., was not there. Sometimes they gave me a little job on the boats as a accountant, as a tallyman, if you like, when the ships came in. And it was interesting because I saw relatives of mine down in the hold of the ship stealing things, And once I was a small, what could I do? I couldn't report them to the police. I would have been destroyed. But looking back, it was an interesting period in my life, the transition from grammar school to trying to survive to the England, when I got a chance to go to England. And those ships were really the old warships that had been, deregulated, if you like. They're not in use in Europe anymore, and they use them to make money.
Yes.
And of course, Ramsey, who came from Barbados, was the agent for the ship at that time. It was a rather interesting period in Montserrat.
Yes. So you get to England, and obviously that's a big transition. You're talking about totally different lifestyle, totally different climate. Now you're a minority, unlike in Montserrat. What were those first few years like in England, the adjustment?
Oh, it was extremely, extremely difficult. But you see, we went to the pub a lot. I had a brother who sang in the pub, and I had English friends, girlfriends, if you like. So that helped the transition. But sometimes one had to get up to the real world and perhaps look for an apartment, and you saw these signs: sorry, no colors, no dogs, and of course it put you back a lot. And the teddy boys were there, race hating and race baiting at the time. That's how I eventually became a speaker in Hyde Park. because I decided that I could not lay down and play dead at the time when there was so much racism in England.
When you first arrived and you went through the tough transition, did at any point you say you wish you were back in Montserrat?
No, I said I wish it would change. I didn't have the courage to go back home because there was nothing for me. In my view at the time, there was nothing for me back in Montserrat. That I was looking forward to a better life in England.
Yes.
And talking about the situation, Martin Luther King was at the top then, and we were looking for changes, in the socio-cultural environment in England.
Hmm. I heard that during the 1964 parliamentary elections in England, one of the conservative parties had a slogan: "If you want a nigger for a neighbor, vote Labour."
I think his name was Ian Powell at the time. You see, he said that the river Thames will be flowing like something blood if you keep allowing black people to. And at the time, the black people were getting the most menial jobs in England, and it was necessary to have this labor force after losing so many people during the war. They needed the labor, for the menial job especially.
What was your very first job when you got there?
I think cleaning trains, the engine of trains, having a rag there and with some oil or something to clean the engine of the train. They call it engine cleaner, which sounded very nice. And then I got a job at a button factory. It was more where my brother worked. That was more prestigious, if you like. But then came the change with meeting a lady on the bus who was looking for a black man to play part in a play she was producing. So I joined her and got bitten by the theater. So I was studying accountancy at the time in the evening, and I changed to the theater, to study theater, the Literature Institute in England, part-time evening course. So that there was a transition, and my crowd, my friends became different, everything. I moved away, if you like, from the black community. I was in a sort of semi-hippie community around Earl's Court, where we had the jazz and everything on Sundays, etc. And we had a contact with the movie crowd and the people who were doing the stage plays, etc., the artistic crowd.
Tell me a little bit about the time when you spoke at Hyde Park. I mean, I guess Hyde Park was sort of a gathering where people talked about social issues and different things like that. Tell me a little bit about how you became sort of a prominent face there.
Yes, I used to go there, and the time I was wearing my dashiki, etc. And of course I followed the speakers very much. And then one day they asked me to say a few words, and I got up and said a few words, and I became a regular speaker. And I was very, very much angry at what was happening in Rhodesia at the time. I think now it's called Zambia. And I got it one day, and I remember vividly that I got the crowd worked up, and I said, if I was white, I would hang myself from yonder tree, because I know that I was evil, evil, evil. And the people were applauding, except one woman, that she had a look of disgust on her face. So after I come down from the podium, signing autographs and so on, I said, what happened? Don't you believe what I'm saying? He said, oh, you're such racist. You're just as bad as them. So we talked and talked and talked, and we went to what was called a wimpy bar, something like a McDonald's, if you like, and we talked. Then we went to the cinema and we talked. Then we met the next day, and she was from Sweden. She was working as an au pair, and we dated somewhat, and then she invited me to come to Sweden. and I went to Sweden.
Okay. And what year was that? Do you remember?
62 or 63, something,
Okay.
about the time.
So Sweden, you traveled to Sweden. Yes, we're still in Europe, but it's a totally different language, totally different, well, now I wouldn't say totally different, but a different lifestyle. What were your impressions upon arriving in Sweden?
Completely different.
In what way?
In a way that people were nice. I think they judge on what you could do and who you were. Not only that, they were kind. I remember being given clothes because they said, no, you can't have those clothes. You need real winter. It was winter clothes, so they arranged for me to have winter socks and shoes and all kind of things. And I noticed flowers and beautiful things.
So basically, here you were in the UK and here you were in England. You're dealing with majority white people who you said many of them could be cruel and even racist. And you go a little further north and you're in Sweden and it's totally different
Right.
reception that you got there.
Yeah.
How did that change you and change your mind?
Because it showed me that I was wrong to lump all white people together. And it's a philosophical aspect of my life that I've condemned racism from black people, I've condemned racism from white people, and I've been doing that through newspaper articles. I understand that perhaps hate can grow from discrimination, but when we say all this is that, we reach a very dangerous stage, very dangerous state. And not only that, the culture of Sweden was completely different for me. The general philosophy of human nature, that we all came from one. Not only that, there was Ingrid Bergman lived in Lerum. There was 5,000 people and she was extremely famous at the time, but you never know it when she went shopping, etc., because she was just an ordinary person. And that was very, very significant for me. The worst thing in Sweden is to talk about what you are, your accomplishments, They call it the poor person, if you do that, you see. So it's very significant.
How did you conquer the language barrier?
Oh, I was going to classes sometimes, but most of the language came through the street language, They used to teach me in Sweden, with some of the alliterations, Schuschman, Schuschman, seven seamen met seven hospital nurses, and etc., and those things. It was very, very important, very, very significant. And I love the Swedish songs. I love calypso too, but some of the Swedish folk songs were very close to me. A transition came when I had to work, of course, and I got a job at the Academy for Dance, which was a prestigious school in Sweden. And they were many people were the audition, people who had a formal dance education. I didn't have any formal dance education, but I was hired, and it was a great success. And later on, I started my own school, but I asked a lady who hired me, her name was Anna Wickstrom, very famous ballerina during the war. I said, why did you take me instead of all the people who had come? She said, you had the fire. So for me, it was fire, fire, all the way to my teaching. Fire, show me fire, give me the fire, show me this, what do you mean by this movement, show me. You get me? To say something with your body, move from A to B, say something, not just go around like a what, parrot or something, you know, but say it, give me words with your body. Fire, 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 fire. And so I had my school for 17 years in Sweden. At first I was very envious of other schools until I knew what I had, and I invited dancers from Alvin Ailey Dance School. To supplement what I had. And then I think 81 we did a world tour, we call it a world tour, but it was a Caribbean tour. We did in New York, St. Kitts, Nevis, Montserrat, the girls Agouti Club in Montserrat. I was very, very, very happy to do that. The dancers were happy too. One stayed behind with Errol Eid for 3, 4, 5 months or so. And this person was interesting because she was from a political family, and she learned so much from our say in Montserrat. So that dance finished. The academic world came along. At the same time I was studying, I was selling at the markets. My technique was based upon the concept of a bank going burst. You spread the rumor that this bank is going to fail, and then the people who have money in this bank all rush to the bank, and the prophecy becomes true. This bank was solid, but because the rumor spread and people do. So therefore, I don't want to sell. I don't want to sell. If you were nice to me, I'll give you a chance to buy from me, you know. I don't want to sell. I don't want to set the prices. I'm selling, so how can I sell and set the price too? You have to do something. You have to be involved. It's only fair that you set the price, you see. And my prices, the labels on my goods were always higher than what I wanted, you know. I would look around to see the new ones also selling the same thing as I was, so they could bargain with their conscience. I also had my secret boxes, some of which had money in, so people would put their hands in a rush. I was very proud when a group from America asked me to sell to them, to have a private selling to them, because there's always so many people around me. This little boy from Montserrat had 9 newspapers in one day, writing about my selling technique. The Business Journal, also in Sweden, wrote about my selling technique and said that people should send their children to me in order to learn how to sell.
I wanted to ask you a quick question. Now, when you became a salesman, I assume that, okay, sometimes when you're in the arts and everything, it's not really a way of making a consistent living. Whose idea was it in the first place for you to become a salesman at the market?
The first thing I did was to want to make money. So what I did first was to have an African arts and craft exhibition in a place called Vaza Harlem. I didn't have any money, but I got the letterheads, and I wrote to all the embassies I could find and tell them that I'm having an exhibition. Can they put me in touch with the commercial firms in their country, and if their sample measure up to standard, then I could import a significant amount. So I heard from African embassies to send me samples, and with those samples I had an African and Arts Utstelling exhibition in Vaza Hall in Gothenburg, and it was a great success. And therefore I decided to go on the market tour. Not every week in Sweden, perhaps 3 days a week, they have markets in different towns, etc. There's something everyone look forward to, especially the more famous market. And I went there, and my little table sold and got bigger and bigger and bigger. I think I started with $30, $30, but got bigger and bigger, bigger. And during the process, a woman put a hat on my head that she had made for me, and the hat was comical, and I got angry and threw it down. The people said, no, 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 it's beautiful, and she to put it on, so I put it on, and that became me with the hat together, and some people stole the hat.
So that hat became sort of your trademark.
Yes, in a way. And also the involvement of the people, the participation mystic. Calypso knows that you have to get the crowd to participate. They have to do something to be involved. And it's like an electric current flowing through the crowd.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yes. So later on, we know that you were a salesman for quite a few years. You still stayed involved in the arts, and later on I heard you had a group called Eddie's Goodies.
Yes, that was the name of the girls decided to perform at different places, and they named themselves Eddie's Goodies in honor of me. And it was very, very sweet of them. I was very honored. And I kept in touch with the group so many years because they thought I've given them something, confidence in themselves. Like, say something when you're walking there on stage, say something love, heart, cold, something jealousy, something, not just walk around like an idiot on stage showing your body.
Right.
You must say something.
Yes. Now, also, so later on, I understand you have a daughter who had a hit song in Sweden. Is that correct?
Oh yes, Zetma, her name is Promise Man. And that daughter, we used to beg her not to sing in the car. We used to pay her to shut up. She was always singing in the car, and she had such a terrible voice. But then she decided to go into the arts. She went to school, and as part of her finishing, they had concerts, amateur concerts, and she was discovered then at that time, So she started singing professionally with the band. And one of her hits was Promise Man, which I have a tape of, and I played sometimes on my radio show because I was very proud. It was on #1 for 14 weeks, and I was very proud of that. She's been to Montserrat several times, but nobody knows that. Also, I have another daughter who's a model, a worldwide acclaimed model. She's been to Montserrat several times, and she hated me to say that she was a model. Instead, just say that I'm your daughter. Don't say that I'm a model. It's not important, So it's sweet.
So later on, you relocated from Sweden and you came back to the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
Why did you make that move?
My mother lived here, and naturally I wanted to be with her. And in a way I was burned out from the success in Sweden had to support me. I was going in the wrong direction. I didn't drink or smoke anything like that, but I wanted to be with my mother. And after I came, she died about 2 months after I came with me. And I had done my degree, my dissertation at that time. And the dissertation, I'm telling you, the professors weren't very pleased because the hall was full of people. Usually it's about 6 people, plus a panel. But I was leaving Sweden, on that Monday, and this is the Friday. And I had to invite all those people who had been good to me. 200 or so people. And we had the station in the park in the evening. I was very happy.
That was 1982, I think?
Yeah, 1982.
That's when you got your doctorate?
Yes, and the dissertation, in Sweden you have to, it's a really beautiful process. when you finish your dissertation, it's printed in 400 copies. For one copy, you have to nail to the wall of the main university wall, very traditional, so that people will know that you did not plagiarize anything like that. You know.
Yes.
And my dissertation was somewhat controversial because in the sociological department there are a lot of Marxists, and this was, you can call it anti-Marxist if you like, but it was rather interesting.
So you've had a really diverse, eclectic sort of life. You started off in Montserrat, and you were a salesman as a teenager. You went to England. You were activist. You had some bit parts in some movies. I think you were even in a movie, Peter Van Schulten.
Yeah, that was 1987 when I didn't want to be in movies. It was my biggest part, you can say, I've ever had. When I turn my back and say I'll never be a big star, I got the part and I took it, and it was exciting because it allowed me to travel even to Senkit. We shot some of it in a place called Boyd's Village in Senkit. It was rather interesting.
Yes. So when you look back on your life and all the different things you've done and everything, is there one particular thing that you're most proud of?
Yeah. Yes. Being from Montserrat, having roots in Montserrat, and being able to weather the storms, and I'm grateful to the Montserrat people, the teachers, who helped me to get a good foundation, a good principle of keeping time. That's one of my faults. I like to be on time all the time, and people can not steal your life away by stealing your time. Because when they steal your time, they're stealing your life. Because perhaps you have another appointment to meet someone or something else to do, and they steal from you. So those are the basic principles, those are the basic stuff. And people in Montserrat who have been my friends through thick and thin, my up and down.
What would be the most surprising thing people would know about you? Would be most surprised to know about you?
I think the academic work. That someone from Montserrat could dig deep into the luxury of Europe, from Socrates up till Marx, and do a good job of it.
And finally, last question. When you look back at your career, you look back at your life, any regrets?
That I didn't spend more time with my children.
That's your biggest regret?
Yeah.
Dr. Eddie Donoghue, thank you so much for talking about your life and your career.
This is a
Very
pleasure.
interesting life.
And you're the first one I've given so many tears to. And thank you for the interview. It's a great honor.
Thank you very much.